So I'm on again with James Davis from C-Level APAC Down Under, and continuing our series about project management and other topics for MSPs, the joint calls together. Last time we talked about common problems with project management that MSPs have. So we talked about how to use PSAs better and get projects going. Today we want to talk about project scoping. So we have a couple of topics lined up for that, a couple of different videos. So welcome back, James. Great to have you again.
Thanks for having me, Wim. It's quite enjoyable last time, and hopefully we helped some people with some of the information we shared. So I'm looking forward to being able to talk about project scoping, because it's a major, like we highlighted, it's a major issue that nearly every MSP suffers from. Very complicated business. So hopefully we can help people in this session get some nuggets of gold that might help them, point them in the right direction, and help their business and their people and their clients get better results.
Yeah, for sure. So just to recap, if you missed the last video, James is Managing Director of C-Level Operations, and he's also a peer group facilitator with IT Nation Evolve, which used to be called HTG. And my name is Wim Kerkhoff, founder of Top Left, as well as two MSPs here in Canada, a Windows MSP and a Linux MSP called Crafty Penguins. So I guess we'll jump into the sales/pre-sales part of project scoping. I guess what do you see as the biggest pitfall or mistake or blind spot that MSPs have in this area, James?
This is probably our biggest issue in projects itself, and often the hardest area to solve, because of one core reason. Most MSPs are running with the owner selling, and they're not doing it in a methodical way for many reasons. Either as an owner, we're so busy, we don't have the time to create a methodology around it. We haven't thought about creating a process. Maybe we're super technical and we get excited about all the new shiny things that we can do. And this is where all our problems start, because we create all these problems from not properly scoping. And that's what most people think the symptoms are. But really where it starts is we have no standardized product set or solution set that we're actually providing to our clients. So from the very start of the engagement with the client, we don't have a clear outcome that we're trying to work to, and we don't have a clear solution stack. We don't have a clear method of delivery, and it flows on right through all the rest of the processes of the projects. I say it time and time again, just because that owner is still the primary salesperson. So if we can tighten this up, and we'll talk about the different areas inside this that we can tighten up, this is going to put our projects on the front foot instead of always on the back foot. When you're working with people, in your experience, do you say that's the starting point that you see as well, or do you see the?
Well, I think if a project goes wrong, that could jeopardize the whole client relationship. If it doesn't flow properly, or actually not solving the original problem that we promised we would solve, or if it's costing more than we estimated and we're charging them more, then there's going to be friction and animosity. And when we're onboarding, even like a new managed services client, recurring revenue, that's great, but that onboarding has to be done really well. If we're missing steps, that's going to impact our profitability and our ability to support them, even on the help desk and the security services we might be delivering. So having a really good project process is key. And I do not think it needs to be a loss leader. These should be highly profitable. This is not just a loss leader to get them in the door and recurring revenue. Like, we should make money on everything we do.
I 100% agree with that, Wim. And I think one of the challenges from that, especially having the owner being the principal salesperson, you mentioned there we're not necessarily highlighting the problems that we've gone in to solve. While we might know sometimes from the technology part, we might be solving slowness, or we might be solving reliability or something like that. Most often the clients don't actually tangibly know what we're solving. We very much skip straight to the tech features that we're providing, and we're not really ever clearly outlining why this client is buying what they're buying, whether it's like a recurring service or whether it's a network upgrade or something. It's always treated as such a simple task. It's just some technology. We're just going to roll it up and it'll be all fine. And because we've got all our trust and relationship with clients. Clients just believe it, and they'll go along with that because they've got a good relationship. They trust that we've achieved things in the past. We're going to achieve good things again. But that misses a whole layer in the sales process, the engagement process. We're just ending up being, well, we're just changing some low-level hardware, or we're just changing over to Microsoft 365 because it sounded good. It's not really touching on the emotional sides and the business ROI. We're never really having those conversations. So when we don't even know that, the client doesn't know that, and when we go through the actual project delivery, how are the techs going to know what they need to deliver on and actually know what we're achieving and what completion looks like? So even without doing any high-level scoping that most people think, even that simple thing of what are we coming in to solve, have we solved it, is a very simple mechanism to start scoping it, and that changes it that dynamic pretty quickly.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that techs have gone through and have completed all the projects, the tickets in the project, and they think are successful, but the client's not feeling 100% that they got emotionally what they were expecting. So how do you connect those dots so that carries all the way through from that first sales conversations, uncovering their pain and the emotional side, and making sure that it's actually fulfilled on by the team? How do you help your clients do that?
So the first thing we've got to do, and people hate the word sales and the salesperson, especially technical owners. They don't like being called a salesperson, but you are, and you need to embrace it and use the skills that you've got from the technical side. Is ask a lot more questions first. We need to be more of a consultative approach, and we need to tie that emotional piece through conversation and question asking. The way that we sell at the moment is usually very reactive. Either the client's coming and requesting something, so we jump and do it, or as we're slowly getting a bit more proactive, we're usually coming just to say we need to replace this because it's old or it needs better security, and that's where we leave it at. We don't have high enough level conversations. So simply asking them after providing information around, yeah, it's old, asking the client, well, what will the impact be if it doesn't get replaced? What would that do to you? How would that make you feel? How will this make you feel when we do replace this? And what does success look like to you? And you'll hear it. Like people will answer, and that in the first place sets up the engagement. But that's just a conversational piece, right, Wim? That's like us talking at the moment. We're having a nice chat. How does that flow through to the rest of the organization and rest of our project delivery and our communication with the client? That's where we need actual robust processes. And what always happens when we talk about projects is everyone wants to get stuck on the fact that they need to go and be the high-level project management with the right project principles in place, and get stuck on needing to be perfect before building their maturity up to that sort of level and taking into account the size of the projects they're doing. So that's when I start working with clients about projects, most of my questions initially when I'm starting to gauge where they're at, what they're doing and understanding, I really want to know what types of projects they're doing and the size of projects, because we really need to give some context to the level of process that we need to provide. And that comes down to, that also feeds into then the standardization part. So I think if I was going to start someone in our conversation that we're having at the moment, I'd go back to that standardization piece. Don't really know what we're selling most of the time. Like even we don't know what we're selling, the value and the what we're trying to achieve for the client. We don't really understand the product stack that we're selling. We do because we know that we sell Microsoft 365 as an example. But what are we actually doing as a solution? And what people get stuck on with that is they're very focused on the technical sides again. We know we roll out Office 365. We know we need to set up, make sure we decommission the Exchange server. We know we need to put in some sort of a backup solution, that kind of thing. But we're not really looking at it as what are the outcomes the clients are getting? What's the process that we need to follow to deliver that outcome each time? And because we don't think like that, that's where we get caught up into re-engineering the solution every time. Because we don't just go create a solution and stick with it. And when I have this conversation with people, most clients get stuck up on, well, this client's different, that client's different. And they see it in isolation instead of going, well, I might have 100 clients. My top 10 who are the largest would have these particular clients. So we'll create a solution stack that fits that size client, and we'll do the same outcomes as a base. That's our standard project. And then now, say next 30 might be like 20 seat clients, and we'll do that same solution every time for the client size, that size. And then for the smaller ones, we'll do it X, Y, Z. And by starting with that, that's when we can start creating a much better process and scope of works at that point, because we can engineer it before we need to sell it. And that goes back to that original thought of running around as an owner and you're super busy and you're trying to get quotes out. We're not really putting the time and effort to do it. Do you see many of your clients and many people that you run in have that sort of level of standardization and, let's call it, buckets of solutions that people roll out consistently?
In top left, yeah, there are MSPs that do that. Not all, not many, I would say. But I don't know, I don't get into enough conversations with them to really, like, we don't really ask for that when we do our initial sales conversations. It's more about, hey, what are your problems, rather than what are all the projects you sell. But some will definitely be very standardized on that. For ourselves, we're getting more standardized. Again, in our own MSP, that's where my mind is going with these conversations, is in the Windows MSP. Like, just to be honest, like, I don't have this all figured out myself. This is still, I'm on the journey with everyone. I guess there is no maybe destination. It's all journey. Keep getting better and applying the lessons you learned and improving it for next time. But I've seen that we've done a lot of different projects, because it's the smaller client base and a high variety project. It's hard to standardize. We're like, we only do this like once or twice a year, if that, or maybe less often. So every time we're starting from scratch, but it doesn't seem like it's worth the effort to build out a whole process around it, a whole standard. Just seeing that. But yeah, on our Crafty Penguin side, with the work we're doing there, we've chosen to say no to potential projects because we're focusing on recurring clients and onboarding and stabilizing them with a particular stack. Yeah, if it's like Oracle or just some far out things, then we just say no. We want to focus on our core stack that our whole team can support, and then improving the automation so we can automate more of the onboarding and enable more people to manage the project, so it's not just one person. So we've been moving in that direction, is standardizing that. So even on our discovery process, it's a very standard process now. So it doesn't just have to be my smartest engineer doing it, but somebody who started a year ago can now be doing a discovery assessment, assess the service, the security, the health, and provide recommendations to at least 80% of what the senior guy would do. So we've been developing that, and that's been helping a lot with the project flow, reducing overwhelm. Because if you've got all these one-off projects that you haven't really done before, you did your best professional guesstimate on the scope, and you wing it, ends up taking more time, and it's depending on one engineer, and there's bottlenecks and there's stress. It's not sustainable. So that's why, like a year or 2 years ago, I started setting a vision for the flow and the profit. I'm like, this should not be less profitable than our managed services. Like, it should flow quickly. So what has to happen so that will be the case?
As you've developed this process, what do you have in place? So you mentioned so some senior people can do the discovery. What's actually there that allows someone to do that like that? It's
been, I guess I could back up bigger picture. So we follow the Traction EOS system for our business. So we've developed one of the components is, well, you got the vision traction organizer. It's a 2-page vision on the one side, traction on the other side. And one of the things there is develop your proven process. So for Crafty Penguins, we now have our way of how do we onboard a client. And it's going to start with getting to know their needs, look at the bigger picture. There might be quick wins. If their hair is on fire, we should maybe like spray that out, solve that. But then it's going to do the assessment, come up with a roadmap, and then onboard them with all the monitoring, get them all patched and stabilized, rebuild, and then ongoing support. So we've got a visual for that, building out the processes, the language, and that's right up there in our sales process. That's how we onboard clients. It's probably more than a traditional onboarding that would happen, but it's how we make sure we're going to have a really good relationship and have that go for a long time. We've done that in the last year, and that's been really helpful. So now it's for each of those, we got a visual for that. So for each one is now getting its own SOPs, breaking it down so that a new hire could be doing this in the first month. And it doesn't require heroics or gut and feel muscle kind of things. That's not as exciting though, is it? There's a lot of work to go through and write this stuff down, isn't it? And a lot of thought process. But A lot of work, but that doing it is part of doing the work. So that's lean thinking, is improving the process and documenting it, creating the SOPs and the procedures is part of doing the work. Jobs like that ticket is not done unless you've actually improved how you do work. So yeah, there's installing that new BDR server for that client. But then it's like at the same time, you're improving the process. So next time it goes a little bit quicker. The flywheel keeps going a little bit quicker every time. It's the 1% improvements that stack up over the months and years.
I'd 100% agree with that. Like even the comment I made before around like thinking about the scoping process and the project management principles at the big high level, there's extreme amount of work to get to that level. And we get paralyzed by over-analysis and perfection instead of just trying to have stages and milestones that we're working towards. So if you don't have any kind of standardization of solution stack or discovery process, first thing is to start writing one down and thinking about it. Like if you've never thought about it before, the work is in a lot of the thinking in the first place, and the writing it down forces you to think and start to put pen to paper to actually progress and take that first step. And that's, for most people, that's the hardest. Once you start getting a rhythm of that, and it's exactly what you said. It's the little 1%ers over and over and over again, and you build a better and stronger and more robust business as time goes on. Especially in the small to medium MSPs, we don't have the resources to aim for perfection ever. We don't have the people that we can just go, we need all of this done, and then we'll train everyone and we'll be at maturity stage 5. We need to follow and work incrementally and slowly. So that lean thinking, I think that's embracing that mindset is going to make a huge change. And what we've already covered around just the simple stuff on the sales and pre-sales side at the moment, even just having that is going to have changing the mindset and having a somewhat of a process and somewhat of a solution stack. You're already going to create some form of repeatability straight away and start to ease the pressure of project delivery. And from that, you're going to see some quick wins on profitability straight up. I know, like you said, around the doing fewer projects, like doing projects that you haven't done that often, it's very difficult to document and make repeatable, because at the moment it's not repeatable. And how you've got like your stack and your ideal clients for your Crafty Penguins, you have a business strategy of what your ideal clients are. And for most MSPs, we're very horizontal. We don't really have a specific client base of a specific vertical or specific technology stack. So we've created in very different environments. And we often with our mindset, we don't actually look for similarities a lot of the time. Is the other problem. So we're not taking the time to understand what our clients actually need and who we deliver and what we deliver to. But we also don't sit there and work out what the similarities and differences are so that we can get an understanding. I think in most MSPs, there are enough similarities that you can, with a bit of effort, you will find enough that you can standardize. And maybe it's 80% that's standardized, 20% that's not. But the sheer fact that you can work your way into that 80% is a dramatic difference in all your service delivery, not just projects. So I think before any other process, that's where I would personally start looking at that, because there's going to be quick wins and it's going to make you think about your own business and how you interact with clients.
Yeah, I think there's always a process, even if it is highly custom work, like very different technologies and situations. There's still it's a creative process, but there is a process of analyzing needs. There's discovery, assessment, report, approval. So you can still come up with a more generic process where it still is going through that with the checks and balances and oversight and those sorts of things. So that's what we've done, is actually just reflecting and just seeing, wow, how far we've come. Is that we used to do, I'd be selling and I'd spend an hour, log in the servers and take a look, check out their Amazon account, whatever. And from that, first I would got together a 50-hour project, and then the team would throw it over the wall to the team to try to deliver. And then I evolved, I got smarter. I had to get an engineer to help scope it out, but he would still miss stuff. So I'd have to fill it in. And then we got to let's charge him 4 hours to do an assessment. But actually 4 hours is not enough to do it justice either. So now we sell them a 15-hour retainer for discoveries. They pay for that. So we can do a proper discussion. What do they want? Document everything, log in, just getting the security figured out so you can go into their systems can be a bunch of work. They could spend 5 hours on that alone, covers the cost of the sale. And from that, then we sell them, we can figure out what do they need for monthly agreement and stabilization onboarding. So they start with 15 hours. We might not use it all. We might need more. Sometimes we've done discoveries that are like 30 or 50 hours, and then we go from there. So we're profitable all the way through, and they're set up to win. Like the client's set up to win because we've actually gotten to we've really understood their needs. And it's a 1 hour conversation, me winging it as the visionary co-founder, like I'm not really getting to the bottom of their needs and what's going on in their systems and the history. So my team can win and the client gets what they want, and it costs a bit more, but actually flows and gets done quicker. So they get the value quicker. But yeah, having the standards is important because I've seen it. Example from like 2 years ago is onboarding a client. We knew how to rebuild their servers. So they paid us 4 hours to assess it. Engineers, he figured 16 hours to rebuild like 3 Linux servers. He's like, yeah, 4 hours per server, pad it a little bit. And no, I think he said 12 hours, let's pad it to 16. When he was actually done, it was like 100 hours. So I got a little bit more from the client, like another $2,000, but not enough. So yeah, we really learned from that. Because he missed like, hey, monitoring, backups, documentation, like that alone can be 30 hours. It was Linux software we hadn't used before, like phone systems we hadn't touched. Like we do have done Linux phone systems, but not that. So now we're more careful.
That's a very good point that you make about like the things that typically people don't think about when they are scoping up a project. Like what you just said, like the documentation, the setting up backups, monitoring, all of those sort of things. They're often left out because we've got very either the owner or the even if we've got a senior engineer, it's very focused on two things. One, the technical side. They're just focusing on the single problem that we think we're solving technically. And that goes back to that original conversation of what are the outcomes that we're trying to get for the project. And we don't see things like project management and documentation as things that we should be charging for. I see very few MSPs of any kind of size charging enough for their project management. And we're afraid that we're overcharging the clients. We're exactly what you said. If you do it right, you'll provide a much better experience. And if you're charging for it, you can spend the money to have the people there to make sure it's flowing right and successfully done, which is even more important in our current market situation with wages being so high. When we're trying to have all our senior techs be in projects, it needs to be profitable. Like you said, projects shouldn't be a loss leader.
Yeah.
We should be achieving minimum 50% in our professional services department.
Yeah.
So if you've got someone there that's non-technical, not doing the work, or an engineer that's giving away all this money for free, that should already say to you, I'm probably undercharging. And I think with all of those points that you made around these different areas, that's often where we get the project hours wrong. There's very few technical people that usually get how long a project takes. I can make fun of my owner that I used to work with. I worked out pretty quickly if he told me it was going to take 40 hours, is actually an 80-hour project.
Yeah, times 2.
It was almost always with techs, it was times 2 because they just weren't considering all the other components to it. And This is what stops owners from selling higher value as well, even if they're considering that I should. The confidence level to actually go out and sell twice the amount of labor stops them. So it's easy to go, we'll just make it up in the managed services. I can guarantee you, if you undercharge your projects, you are going to have poor managed services margins because you're going to you're always going to be cutting corners. The projects aren't ever delivered properly. So you're going to create more work for your managed services than you think you are. And because we don't track the data and measure it properly, we're hiding it. So this is why that scoping is so important. Even if we don't go to huge levels of detail, but even that simple standardization of documenting what do we need to do, estimating the hours around it, and making sure we take into account project management, documentation, client communication, all those soft parts added in, and you'll start to see a good win.
Yeah, that value, how the engineers can focus or value their time on the project management, I think it's the most important thing. not the tech side, like managing it so it gets done, whether it's my techs or using a contractor. It's like, so why would I undercharge or shortcut that PM? It's like the most important thing.
I completely agree. It's, and especially when you take into account, we'll talk about this more when we talk about the actual project delivery, but how much we struggle in general as MSPs to actually get projects closed and built. It's because we're not actually investing any time in the project management, making sure things are happening and getting done. So not only are we cutting our margins from our projects and our service delivery, we're also doing a disfavor to ourselves with collecting cash. So even if we're undercharging, often we're waiting months and months to even see that cash. So it all stems from these sort of simple principles from the very beginning.
Yeah, I look forward to in our future call, we'll get into the cash management, cash flow side of it. So yeah, I guess the last question to wrap up this video is, this sounds really complicated to do a standards and a statement of work and cover every scenario and all the backups and cover your butt everywhere and paper it. That sounds really overwhelming. Does it need to be that complicated, or like how do we handle this so it's a good, like, what's your perspective on this?
It doesn't need to be complicated. We can make this nice and simple. We even from the start, what we can do is make a list in Excel. What are the types of projects we do? What are the outcomes we're providing as a part of that? What bucket does that fit in? Is it based on size of people? Is it based on this particular technology of what we're doing? And how long we'd expect for that to take? And then just take into account technical delivery, documentation, project management, administration for that type of project. And there's a rough start. And then it comes into like what you were talking about, lean. We just need to stop and think after each project. Did we achieve what we wanted to do? How long did it take us to do? What were the mistakes? Well, we'll do it better next time. You can't do any worse than what you're doing now. If you don't have any process, by just starting that simply, you're already a step further than what you are. So this worry about, might have still undercharged, you're already undercharging. So this is still a step forward that's going to make it better. And I would just do it that simply in a spreadsheet. And then as you mature and learn more lessons, it will naturally improve, for one thing, but you'll get to certain points where you really know that you'll either need help to do this better, or there's often logical next level maturity steps that you would do. You would get more detailed in your scope of works in your proposals. You get more detailed in the project plans. You will know when you're there because you're feeling the pain. At the moment, it's all just chaos and it feels like it's all burning down. So let's just solidify it a little bit.
Yeah. Take
some steps forward, and you'll see those changes.
Yeah, I agree with that. What's helped me a couple of years ago is realizing how my brother sells projects. He's not in tech at all, right? There's nothing about tech. We help him, but he's not in tech. But he's doing like home renovations, and he'll do a $300,000 home renovation job. And look at his contract. Yeah, it's 2 or 3 pages, but really that scope of work is like a third of a page, because you figure out how many square foot, and he's got a price, and he has a big enough markup. So, and he knows his cost pretty good. Some that's kind of gone crazy with supply chain the last couple of years, but he makes a lot of money, and he's always busy, and he's like the most expensive company. I'm like, okay, I can learn a thing or two from my big bro. It doesn't need to be complicated. It's a trust with the client that you're going to do it, and he delivers on it, and he's got enough margin to go and do it right.
And that's how most industries do it. It really comes down to that simple, what are we doing? And knowing that we're accounting for that behind the scenes, and then get better and better at doing it and living up to the client. So 100% agree.
Good. All right. That was good. Next time we plan to talk about handing off from sales to project delivery, setting the team up to win, considering, my tendency anyways, to throw the ball over the fence, and doesn't work. So we'll unpack that. I'd love to learn your advice on that.
I'm excited to talk about that one. That's going to be really fun.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. I'll see you next week, probably.
Thank you very much, Wim. I'll see everyone next time.